Y'all may not like my answer. What's up, guys? Uncle Pencil here, and we want to do a nice little breakdown and discussion on whether or not Yuji Itadori's punches actually do soul damage. And like our Duraneg, soul, all that good stuff. Because this is like a hefty little impact on Yuji Itadori's viability in terms of combat in his own verse, and especially beyond it, considering how much of a boost Yuji needs in cross-verse debates. But let's not waste any more time, and let's hop right into it. Editing me, are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Hey, what's up, guys? That guy. Why do I keep doing that? Sort of. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact: I do happen to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. Another fun fact: we're gonna go all the way back to the beginning, way back in time, back to 244, which is crazy to think that's like, not even what 4, 5 months. We're in May. Did 244 come out last year? Golly, time's fly. But with that being the case, all the way back to 244, where we first got to see Mr. Yuji Itadori hit the Y order, and boom! Deck Sukuna right in the hand. Because unfortunately he couldn't, well, hands plural. We see that Sukuna is a bit bamboozled, and he's confused, and he does a little jiggle wiggle. Like, well, okay, he staggers, but he did a jiggle wiggle, and he asks, what just happened? And then we cut away. But this is the first instance of the soul thing. The soul punches. And to give the common reason why I'm discussing this, a lot of people assume that these little jiggle wiggles that Yuji can cause Sukuna are soul damage, in a similar vein to SSK. Essentially, just view it as a soul split katana that, instead of katana-ing you, blunt damages you. So, like, think of it as a much more forceful way of what Mahito was doing. Like, every single punch disfigures you in one way, shape, or form and does damage to your soul. Personally, I don't think that's it. Mainly because of how both of the phenomena that we see, active soul damage, well, not both of, but all three of the phenomena we see, soul manipulation, soul damage, and, in my opinion, soul dechaining, which is what I think this is, are all explained. So obviously in 244 we don't actually get much of an answer of what Yuji did. He just makes Sukuna do a jiggle wiggle, and Higuruma goes into his do-over. But luckily enough, we do actually get further elaboration and explanation on what the heck Yuji Itadori is doing. As we see all the way in 248, a whole 4 chapters later, there is a little certain something about Yuji Itadori. Ultimately, we see that Yuji not only acquired reverse curse technique, but he actually managed to get Sukuna to acknowledge him, if only for a little bit. And notably, it's due to the unbreakable ideal, but not necessarily anything else. Sukuna, at this point, does not note Yuji for having any sort of soul damage. In fact, in the previous chapter, 247, he still highlights Yuji as boring. Keep this in mind. So we go on even further into the future, even further beyond, plus ultra type beat to 249, where we finally get, like, at least, in my opinion, I need to double check. I would have to double check, but I'm pretty sure this is the first direct acknowledgement of what Yuji's actually doing. Notably, this is the plan with Yuta Kotsu's domain expansion. Then the boy will deliver a blow that captures the soul and tears Megumi Fushiguro's body from my body. So, let's look at the phrasing there. Captures the soul. Sort of like grabbing onto it, but not necessarily changing its shape or damaging it. For example, don't you hide from me! You're in my domain. This is a pencil. This is me capturing a pencil. Am I doing any damage to the pencil? Not necessarily, right? This is the guard on the pencil. I can remove the guard from the pencil. Did I damage the pencil? I guess in a roundabout way, but not necessarily. These are both still fully intact. They're just now 2 separate entities, and I can put them back together. That's what Yuji does. He's just attacking the boundary, the connecting point, the chain link, and even then, he's attacking in a roundabout way by doing what he's doing. All that Yuji's punches are confirmed to do are lower Sukuna's output and ultimately lower the connection between his soul and Megumi's. He doesn't actually realistically damage either of them, at least not in the same way that SSK does. This is even further doubled down on when we get a further explanation of what Yuji's doing. And we're going to get into this because it's the main counter-argument I've seen. There's another problem. They're applying the same principle that allowed the boy's attacks to have an effect on the Patch-Face curse. They're targeting the boundary between my soul and maybe Fushiguro's soul, in an effort to awaken Fushiguro's soul, which I submerged in the bath, to disrupt the attunement of our physical forms. Every time I take an attack from the boy, my curse energy output drops, and my physical prowess and control decreases. Despite the risk, they intend to chip away until I can't maintain Hollow Wicker Basket, and then use the yada 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 yada. Main thing, attacks the boundary of the soul. So note what is said there. The boundary between the souls. Yuji's punches aren't actually doing any soul damage. They aren't misshaping Sukuna, they aren't doing anything like that. They're just, once again, taking the guard off the pencil. Let's say this is Sukuna. Let's say this is the guard. Let's say this is Megami. This is his soul. Sukuna, all Yuji does with every single punch is... This isn't like what Mahito does. What Mahito does is, as noted, tear the whole thing apart. He mishapes it. He manipulates it. And since the soul in Shijike has a reflection on the physical form, with the exceptions of obviously Toji and Maki, considering their special souls, bada bing, bada boom, that ends up causing havoc upon the physical form and can actually execute a person if their biology cannot maintain the new shape of their soul. But Yuji doesn't do anything like that. The only time we get to see direct soul damage is when someone is legit taking a blade and attacking a soul, is not by Yuji. Not by Yuji here. Not by Yuji here, but actually, it's by Maki. We get a further elaboration on what Maki and Soul Katana are able to do. Now, for the longest time, I was a proprietor of Soul Split doing soul damage. It's the main reason why I kind of flipped my tune 100% on Mahito versus Maki and Toji. Obviously, this happened long ago, like long ago. But for the longest time, I kind of had them losing to the disaster curses, and especially Mahito, because like, oh, they can't damage him. But now with the confirmation of Soul Split Katana, I always thought it did soul damage. And I guess Gege did too, because it's explained here. And Sukuna notes, this is the big thing. Remember I talked about Sukuna's intentions and what he notes and what he explains is happening. This wound is healing slower than the others. When someone who can observe souls wields the Soul Split Katana, reverse curse technique doesn't usually heal the wound, because it's soul damage. Repairing the soul's shape, which implies the shape of the soul is distorted, which is something that's only noted by SSK and its attacks. Repairing the soul's shape requires comprehending the soul's contours. Two souls inhabit Sukuna's body, so he was aware of the contours of his own soul, much like with Yuji Itadori. But he couldn't perfectly adapt to reverse curse technique, functioning differently than usual, while suffering the after effects of his fight against Satoru Gojo. So, this does two things. One, it distinctly separates Soul Split Katana and its soul damage from Yuji and his regular hits. Or, obviously not his regular hits, his soul hits. What this confirms, ultimately, is that Yuji does not damage the soul. He attacks the boundary between the souls. He does not do what SSK does. SSK is unique. You can tell this by how the narrator explains it. You can tell by how Sukuna notes this wound, particularly this wound, not any of the previous ones that Yuji's given him, Yuda's given him, anyone else has given him. In spite of Yuji dropping his output, none of them have caused this soul effect that is explicitly mentioned by the narrator. Only SSK has. So what does that mean? It means Yuji doesn't do soul damage. He just attacks the boundary between the souls. That also means Yuji's punches aren't Duradeg. And I think this is also pretty self-evident if you just read how Sukuna interacts with both. Admittedly, Sukuna in 257 just gets absolutely mollywopped by Yuji. He has no choice to take all these hits. But note, once again, despite Sukuna noting that, oh no, my output, oh no, my control of the body, oh no, it keeps falling, he never notes that any of these wounds are harder to heal, very particularly because of the shape of his soul. The narrator never notes that any of these wounds are harder to heal because of the particular shape of Sukuna's soul being distorted by Yuji's punches. That's never noted. Not once. He has all these different interactions, but ultimately, none of those do that. Which is actually kind of unfortunate for Yuji, because it means that his soul punches are less effective on a broader scale. Notably, his soul punches are still very, very effective on anyone like Sukuna, aka any incarnated sorcerer. So if Yuji were to be fist fighting Kashimo, it would be effective. Ryu, it would be effective. Earl, it would be effective. Reggie, his regular punches would be effective, but it would still be effective. Any incarnated sorcerer or Ume, throw whoever you want in there. Yorozu, why not? They would all be effective in a similar way. Their output would drop, and bada bing, bada boom, boom. Sorry, the Sonic Colors took me over there. But anybody's output and control over their respective vessel would drop. What does this mean beyond that, though? It means it basically doesn't matter if you use any of their original forms. Like, you use original Earl, that advantageous situation is gone. You use original Ryu, completely vanishes. Original Kashimo, completely vanishes. None of those characters would be affected by anything Yuji does. Because he doesn't do soul damage. And that is the issue. Notably, the reason SSK is so good, not just inverse, but also crossverse, is that it doesn't matter. It does soul damage. And makes things more difficult unless you can perceive the contours of the soul. Which is admittedly still more common crossverse than you would think, based on how JJK does it. But still is difficult within JJK. Kashimo doesn't have RCT. Neither does Ryu. Did Earl have RCT? Like, none of the reincarnated sorcerers seem to have RCT for some reason. Except for, like, Ume. But with that being the case, they would all just be kind of stuck out of luck if they got hit by Soul Katana. If they got hit by Yuji's punches, they could presumably still keep fighting. But their wounds would be locked in, because Soul Katana does actual soul damage. Yuji's punches attack the boundaries between souls. They capture the soul. They do everything but actually damage it. Which is not good. At least for Yuji. Because it means his punches do just have regular potency. They have this extra effect only on incarnated sorcerers. This means against someone like Hikari Kenji, Hikari should just be able to bulk a lot of what Yuji does. I don't think Yuji's strong enough to, like, punch limbs off or something like that. Because otherwise, he doesn't actually do soul damage like a Maki would with SSK. Maki would not necessarily have any issues with Yuji's punches outside the fact that they would hurt. Because, once again, she's in her own body with an incarnated first form, whatever. Like, she's not incarnated in the sense that she's in her original flesh, would not be bothered. The only weird hypothetical interaction this could have is Yuta, because Yuta's very consistently noted as the possessed brat, the brat who's tied to somebody else. There's even the embers of Rika's soul that are, like, apparently still lingering within this copy of Rika. So, like, maybe Yuji's soul punches would do something to him, but no. They wouldn't Duraneg Yuta, meaning that Yuji would still have to overcome the insane wall that is Yuta Okotsu's raw bulk. Which is really, really, really unfortunate. It narrows Yuji down a lot. And notably, the big thing that extra gets noted, or at least isn't stated, it seems like it's only his regular hits. Only his regular punches seem to have this effect. I don't think anything else does. Because notably, when Sukuna gets hit by crazy certain combinations, like a piercing blood, it doesn't seem to be noted to do anything but regular damage to Sukuna. No mention about his output dropping even further. It's only with the regular hits. Meaning that this hypothetical soul damage effect is kind of null and void for anything else. And it also means that hypothetically, if Yuji were to fight the original Sukuna, it would not matter. I mean, maybe, because, like, if you assume Jin Soul was absorbed into Sukuna, but that seems unlikely based on the fact that Jin Soul did incarnate separately from Sukuna's fingers, so the souls likely weren't too intertwined unless you go with the fan theory that Kenjaku separated Sukuna and Jin Souls, allowing Jin Soul to kind of go into the cursed realm and eventually be reincarnated. That's weird, I'll fully admit that, but the one thing that I think is the hardest thing to lay down, the biggest and beefiest thing to lay down, is that Yuji's soul punches are very, very, very conditional. They are not effective verse-wide or cross-verse-wide in terms of their effect. They are only effective against beings who have multiple souls. Think of it very similar to the concept introduced in the Dragon Ball Super manga, Force Spirit Fission, where ultimately, if you are a fused being, a being that is united on multiple fronts with multiple souls inside of you, then hypothetically Yuji's punches would be extremely effective in separating the two. Well, not extremely effective, considering Yuji's hit Sukuna an amazing amount of times after Sukuna's taken extreme amounts of damage, upwards of 7 black flashes, and Sukuna is still most certainly in one piece, but still, that being the case, it's just like that, where someone like Vegeta implies that, oh yeah, I could split people, including people like Fused Piccolo, because you have multiple people in you. But anyone who doesn't, like Goku, would not be affected by Sukuna's, well, not Sukuna's punches, but by Itadori's punches. Gojo wouldn't be affected by him. Maki wouldn't be affected by him. Hikari wouldn't be affected by him. Yuta may not be affected by him. Anybody, Yuki, Geto, anybody who's not. However, this still does mean that Yuji does still have a dramatic advantage over some of the strongest in the verse. Technically, Kenjaku is not in his original body. Far from it. Meaning he would likely be a Yuji punch victim. Shoot. If you think that Urume's a top tier like I do, they are also likely heavily affected by Yuji's punches. Not in the soul damage sense, but in the boundary sense. Urume is an incarnated player. Apparently that fan theory, it was literally just me and like 5 of the people, but like that fan theory that Urume just froze themselves waiting for Sukuna's second incarnation, yeah, they didn't Walt Disney themselves. No, they just incarnated later. So ultimately, Yuji's punches, while having a very good use on Sukuna, are only effective on Sukuna. And those of his ilk. They do not do soul damage, like SSK does. Meaning they are a lot less viable cross-verse. And even a lot less viable inverse. Because now you just got to argue Yuji's AP. Which is still good. Like, I don't get me wrong. Yuji's AP ain't nothing to sneeze at. Ain't nothing to scoff at. Obviously, it had Ryoma and Sukuna geeking and tweaking by the end of 257. And that boy mad. But even still, I do think that does lower the general potency of Yuji's post-awakening ability kit, and also takes away any hypothetical extra advantages like soul negation or damage to the soul from things like cleave or blood manipulation. Anything that Yuji does no longer counts as like extra soul damage. Nah, it's just if you are incarnated, it will start to lower your output and demerge the souls. It will, once again, going back to the physical comparison, it will remove the guard from the pencil. It will not damage the guard nor the pencil. Very, very unfortunate. I know people are going to be like, well, didn't he do soul damage to Mahito? Yes. He could damage Mahito's soul because he could somewhat perceive it subconsciously. But once again, Mahito was a special case. An exception to the rule. If it was the case that because Yuji could damage Mahito, he always does soul damage, we would have learned that earlier. A lot more characters would experience that whole soul-shaking thing that Sukuna experiences earlier, but no one else notes that. It is only Mahito. So, the soul damage that Yuji does to Mahito, that's unique to that specific interaction, just like the soul damage Yuji does to Sukuna and any other incarnated sorcerer is specific to them being in their second incarnation, or fused with another human being. He can target the boundary. He can capture a soul. He can hold it in his hands, but he cannot damage it in a way that Maki Zenin can. Which is unfortunate for Yuji, but I still think he's going to get something to compensate for that. And he already has a form of Durag and Cleave that he's just going to keep getting better and better and better at. So don't worry, Yuji fans. This isn't like a horror nerf for your boy. But to be fair, I don't think it was a buff to begin with. However, that's what I think. Please know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you think I'm absolutely stupid and wrong and just missed the point entirely, and he still somehow does soul damage to Durag and some way to SSK, in spite of them being noted separate and different by Sukuna and the narrator? Or do you think that your boy right, and he doesn't do soul damage, and needs to rely on that cleave Durag rather than any other type of Durag? Please let me know all that and more in the comment section down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave Soul Sucker. That sounds so bad. Yeah, whatever. I did Meat Slapper once already. Gosh darn it. Soul Sucker in the comment section down below. And thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do happen to have a Patreon down below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month. Now month, things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks will include the live reactions at the very next chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen, ad-free variations of all my videos, and if you become a $25 patron or a $25 member, you can order whatever video you want. Also, I do have a link to my Ko-Fi in the description down below where you can request a short video for as low as $5 or a full-length video for 25 beans one time only. But now, thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Dago the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members, Wakana Plays, Greyhound, At Kids Void, Astro, Eternal Flame, Red Wolf 4765, King Sukuna, NMA, Real Rare, and Paris Arnold. I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons, Super Gamer Q, Steron, Sean, Sammy, Oexian, Midnight Lord 21, Kevin, Encarnacion, Josh Brown, and Igneel. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $7 member, Autumn Mornings Lazo. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $10 members, Jay Warrior and Robbie Uchiha. And I'd like to give a big ol' thank you to our $10 patrons, Panda Goat, Joaquin Munoz, and Idem Okami. And I'd like to give a gargantuan thank you to our $25 patron, China Doll 09. I'd like to give another gargantuan thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.